Today I'm going to read you a very special book called The Curious Garden. It's about a very special place in New York City. Maybe you'll be able to recognize it at the end. The Curious Garden. There was once a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside, even on drizzly days. While everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam, happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the train tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for a curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing that he expected to find up there, but when he looked closer, it became clear that the plants were actually dying. They needed a gardener. See, some of the plants look very happy, but the others are drying out. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found a better way of gardening. This is a nice way to garden. Liam is singing to the plants. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless, and it wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and the mosses were the first to move. They popped up further and further down the tracks, and they were closely followed by the more delicate plants. See all the plants? Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. He's exploring further. There's Liam. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell in the city that season, and for the first time since he became a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. You see him reading a book with a flower on it. After 3 cold months of snow, it finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken the toll on his garden, but thanks to Liam's planning, his handy tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon woke from their winter sleep. You can see that Liam's singing again. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway, and they were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. There's an old, forgotten car. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Oh dear. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising thing that popped up were new gardeners. With no shoes, he can walk down the mossy stairs without shoes. Picnic blanket, massive lily ponds, lily pads, I think those are. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. So this is very different than the first page, when the city was very dreary and gray. Now it's got lots of green on the roofs, on the high line. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story. I enjoyed reading it to you. I'll read you another story on another day. Goodbye, friends.